Hello, I'm Steve Peace, Managing Partner at Newland Partners. May I take this opportunity to thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Today we are looking at the value of accountability when managing performance. This has been a series of webinars we are delivering over the next few weeks. Our final session will be looking at feedback and specifically breaking the norm and how to accelerate innovation. We hope you find the content raised lots of good conversational points, along with picking up tips to navigate the current climate and some takeaways for you moving forward. So we will be focusing on three key areas today around helping you become better at managing performance. We will be looking at what essential tools are required that can help you manage performance and extract potential. Next, we will focus on accountability. More specifically, looking at how to identify and leave the victim behaviours behind, and some core leadership lessons in becoming an accountable leader. Finally, we will look to bring it all together to see how you can create psychological safety that will help embed a performance culture. I believe that there are some core elements required within any manager or leader toolkit to be able to manage performance. Coaching skills are required to show managers are accountable at developing relationships, which is key to driving performance and extracting potential. Coaching ingredient essentials revolve around effective listening and questioning. This can help give you an understanding of current reality versus where you want to be. The ability to reflect back on performance is essential, as this drives objectives moving forward. The biggest challenge is to build relationship and rapport. Without this, you will struggle to challenge and set high standards for people to excel and exceed. By not embracing and building a coaching culture, you will struggle to help people realise their goals and objectives. Performance reviewing is a critical process in establishing and measuring performance effectiveness. We need to move away from the old school appraisals that happened once a year, as these should now be an ongoing one-to-one conversation. This process helps managers stay in touch with current performance, and regular catch-ups with you can see areas for improvement. Areas have been achieved, and keep the process that evolves in line with the current output. Without having a simple performance reviewing framework, how on earth are you able to know who is achieving or who is not? Are you happy to pay salaries out without knowing you are getting value for money? Objectives need to be set, followed up and reviewed. If not, manager credibility dips, as the direct reports knows their manager will never chase them up if completed or not. This is the opposite of accountability. It creates a culture without responsibility. Having a capability process or policy helps you manage the risk. This is not a process to see people managed out of the business, but a process that forms the foundations of the formal process. The sole purpose is to have a structure in place that can help underperformers get back to expected levels of performance. You can use this as a tool to re-establish the role, team and organisational requirements. By having a company capability policy provides transparency for the employee, the line manager and a human resources function to see the organisation is being fair and reasonable in looking into re-establish what is required, performance parameters and expectations. Finally, it is essential to keep a record of your conversations relating to performance and conduct. When managing any form of risk, it is imperative to demonstrate that you have given fair and reasonable opportunity to reach the standard performance expectations that are required. Summarising your meetings in emails or making file notes help remain clear and transparent. Should you find a process going all the way to an employee tribunal, the first thing they will look at is have you kept to your process, and that links to your capability. Using Stewart's ladder of accountability, we can start to see the difference between accountable behaviours and victim behaviours. The victim behaviours are often seen during periods of change or pressure. Stage 1 is the classic head in the sand and often refusal to actually see what is going on at the moment. Stages 2 and 3 are fixed mindset behaviours. This is where the default position is to blame others or make excuses to why something hasn't happened. Stage 4 have their fingers crossed. This is the attitude where they just hope it will all go away and someone will sort it out for them. The accountable behaviours are often noticed with more proactive and progressive people. Stages 5 and 6 is where people start to take more responsibility for their actions and performance. Stages 7 and 8 are the individuals who are more proactive and action focused. Do you sometimes see these behaviours before you've even spoken to someone? We can often preempt the victim responses, but we should remain open to our listening and questioning that can help us navigate them to adopting more accountable behaviours. What is the value of accountability when managing performance? This is where you start to create individual responsibility. When individuals adopt these behaviours, you are more likely to see this enhance the collective's mindset. The feel-good factor will always rise when people achieve within the collective rather than individually. To be able to share success with others creates more of an accountable and team environment that people can operate and thrive in. So where else do we see this often? What lessons can we learn from high-performing teams? Accountability is key in the armed forces. Out in the field, individuals have a responsibility to themselves, but to their peers and colleagues too. If there is an unaccountable chink in the chain, it could see the failure of a mission or a key objective. In this current climate, we see intensive care unit workers under extreme pressure. They too have accountability in their actions, as this leads to patient safety and risk management. So what is common with these two types of teams? Well, it's not a life and death, but fundamentally they are no different to us. They are all working towards objectives and goals. Nowadays, a lot of us are working from home. We do have a responsibility to keep an element of structure to our day. Not having to go into our place of work can sometimes be a struggle for people. Home and remote working is a bit of an art. It's not necessarily for everyone, but this is the current hand that we've all been dealt. Managers must improve levels of communication even more with their teams scattered around in their respective homes. We all need to remain accountable, but showcasing responsibility in our words, actions and general output is key. So what does an accountable leader look like to you? According to best-selling author Vince Molinari, truly accountable leadership is the only way an organisation can weather uncertainty in a world that's been upended. Well, that's a pretty accurate description of our current climate, but leaders are now being looked upon to help us navigate through these periods of change. There was a recent survey carried out by Visual Capitalist's article on navigating uncertainty. The survey found 5 common behaviours of accountable leaders in stronger performing companies. They simplified it down to 5 characteristics of these accountable leaders. Firstly, hold others accountable for high standards of performance. Good leaders make mutual expectations clear by consistently reinforcing what is important and what employees should prioritise in their roles. Tackle tough issues and make difficult decisions. Technology is hugely beneficial, but it should never replace the human element. Picking up the phone or having a Skype call is more immediate and personal, especially when it comes to problem solving and making tough decisions. Dealing with things at inception is critical. Communicate the strategy across the organisation or your team. Leaders must ensure that employees have complete clarity in terms of the company's vision to do their jobs effectively. Creating a set of well-defined goals can help people stay engaged and decrease their stress levels. Reaffirm clarity of vision, goals and objectives. Express optimism about the company and its future. Many employees can feel isolated and disconnected in the virtual world, so leaders must provide support, positive energy and a sense of hope for the future. Display clarity about external trends in the business environment. Finally, it is critical to help employees make sense of the current situation right now. Leaders must provide honest and transparent communication in a way that manages fear, stress and anxiety. This encourages employees' determination to help an organisation succeed. So with some of the tools and behaviours in place, how do you embed a performance culture? Let me show you something that Google identified when they carried out a large team effectiveness survey recently.
One of the biggest questions is how to build the perfect team. And in fact, about 4 years ago, Google invited me to come spend some time with them because they were in the middle of a big project called Project Aristotle, a huge data study to try and figure out how to build the perfect team at Google. Initially, their hypothesis was that the best teams are teams where you put people together who like each other, right? Maybe you need a good mix of extroverts and introverts. Maybe you need people who are friends away from the conference room. And so they looked at the data and they did experiments and they found that who was on a team actually didn't matter at all. They couldn't find any correlations between team membership and team success. So then they started looking at how a team interacts. And this is where suddenly everything became clear. Because what they found is that the people who are on a team matter much, much less than how those people interact. That you could have enemies on a team together, or you could have strangers or friends, or people who don't get along, or all introverts or all extroverts. And as long as they treat each other a certain way, as long as there's a certain culture, then that team will gel. So as they started looking at these behaviors, what they found was that there were two in particular that mattered more than anything else. The first was called equality in conversational turn-taking. During a meeting or a set of meetings, if everyone speaks at roughly the same amount, then that team is much more likely to succeed. But just speaking isn't actually enough. The second characteristic that teams need in order to do well is called ostentatious listening. That basically, in addition to encouraging you to talk more, I, as a team leader or team member, have to show you that I'm listening by doing things like repeating what you just told me or closing my computer so I can make eye contact with you. If you have these two characteristics, conversational turn-taking and ostentatious listening, it creates what psychologists refer to as psychological safety. And psychological safety is shown as the single greatest correlate with a group's success. When a group feels like they are psychologically safe with each other, you unlock their best ideas, their ability to work together, their innovative capacities. Google's fundamental belief, as is true for many other companies, is that it's only when a team comes together that you actually get the best ideas out of each person and the best work at getting things done.
So with that in mind, how do you start to create psychological safety? Well, Google commissioned that 2-year study into team effectiveness within the high-performing culture and came back with 3 core takeaways. The first 2, as mentioned there, ostentatious listening and equality in conversational turn-taking. So ostentatious listening is the process of showing that you are listening. Listening is one thing, but body language and the level of attention is key to this, as it can be the differentiator between hearing what someone has to say and actually listening to what they're saying. Show intent in your facial expressions and responses. Lack of conversational turn-taking is something we have all probably experienced in our working and even personal lives. Allowing people to have their say in similar or equal amounts will essentially make them feel more connected to the collective and part of the team. If the leader dictates, people are more likely to acquiesce and reluctantly conform. By not allowing someone to talk about their ideas or viewpoints is a lesson in stifling innovation and lack of inclusivity. Basic employee engagement relies on people feeling that they have a voice and they are being listened to. Finally, the survey underpinned that trust mattered most. Without trust in their leader, colleagues or peers led to a lack of engagement and even desire to be there, let alone having the confidence to make decisions and carry out their respective roles. So how do you build trust? The quality of your one-to-ones and coaching culture can dictate that level of relation and rapport. This is essential for your management community. Do they feel safe with you? Do you have their back? Do you feel like you're stretching them to perform? Are you allowing them to be creative and innovative at all? Even down to your own body language, your openness to conversation can be a simple way to show that you are creating a psychological safe environment for them to thrive in. Leaders rely on people who trust them in order to follow them. I read an article last week in the Harvard Business Review. It was titled, "Everything Starts with Trust." The strapline being, trust is the reason we are willing to exchange our hard-earned cash for goods and services, why we pledge our lives to another person in marriage, or why we cast our ballot paper for someone who will represent us in politics. We rely on laws as safety nets, but even they are built on trust in the institutions that enforce them. So, hopefully there have been some good insights and takeaways for you from today's session, and you can see how this all contributes towards building psychological safety and getting on the path of creating a performance culture. We have looked at 3 areas that can help you understand the value of accountability in managing performance and see how these skills and considerations can help us during this current pandemic crisis. Identify what is lacking within your organisation to see what can be improved. This is essential in the management community around developing coaching skills, carrying out one-to-one conversations, having a security of a robust capability policy to help re-establish performance expectations. You can start to differentiate between the victim and accountable behaviours to help you create a culture of responsibility that directly contributes towards improving performance levels. This is all underpinned with the simplistic lessons from Google about building trust through psychological safety. Essentially, all of these tools will assist you in installing structure that can help you develop a performance culture. After today's session, we'll be sending out handouts and content summaries. Hopefully you found this interesting and you can find this of use for you moving forward. Also, to let you know that as official Insights partners, we do offer virtual psychometric profiling along with team and leadership effectiveness. We do create bespoke webinars that can help develop the people and organisation you work in. We are also launching a new CPD accredited leadership learning program soon. Get in touch if you'd like to know more. Finally, may I take this opportunity to thank you for joining us today, and we hope you enjoyed the session. Thank you.